When Sultan Mehmed II ascended the Ottoman throne, he wasn't just inheriting an empire. He was about to reshape how wars were fought. Known to history as Mehmed the Conqueror, he is famous for the fall of Constantinople, but that victory was only possible because of something deeper: the creation of disciplined, centralized and professional army units unlike anything the region had seen before. During his reign, Mehmed transformed the Ottomans from a frontier force into a true imperial military power. He strengthened the Janissaries, expanded the Devshirme system, standardized training and pay, and combined cutting-edge gunpowder weapons with traditional Turkic tactics. This wasn't just reform, it was a blueprint for centuries of Ottoman dominance. In this video in our series on the history of the Ottoman military, we'll explore how Mehmed II built the classical Janissary Corps, why it worked so well, and how his military vision changed the balance of power in the early modern world. This video is sponsored by you. Unfortunately, the YouTube environment is not great right now, with the algorithm being friendlier to drama and react channels and YouTube being permissive of AI slop. We don't do drama and we don't do AI. But thanks to our members and patrons, our channel continues to make 3 public videos per week, with the team intact and going strong. In recognition of their generosity and contributions, members and patrons receive 2 additional exclusive videos each week, and access many other perks. Join them to watch more than 250 exclusive videos covering every era of history. Join them by scanning the QR code on your screen, via the links in the description or pinned comment, or by pressing the join button under the video. While the Ottoman state had achieved a lot in creating a standing army with specialized units and a standardized battle formation, significant reforms were still needed to make it a fighting force that could be wielded with great efficiency and speed in Europe, Asia and Africa. Between 1389 and 1448, its army had already won countless famous victories. But with the accession of the ever-ambitious Sultan Mehmed II in 1451, the army was reformed from the ground up to ensure the loyalty of all corps. During his brief first reign after his father's abdication, Mehmed faced major opposition from viziers, especially Jandeli Halil Pasha, and from the Turkish aristocracy. These groups attempted to block his aggressive foreign policy over seizing Constantinople, ultimately inciting the Janissaries to mutiny, dethroning him in 1446. This was the first time in their history that the military corps had exercised its political power by making demands on the civil authorities, such as demanding an increase in their salary. In a short time, Halil Pasha and his followers lost control of the mutiny, which quickly turned into a rebellion, resulting in the looting of many homes and palaces in the Ottoman capital of Edirne. The whole ordeal was a traumatizing episode for Mehmed, and it was a troubling sign that the unruly elements of the army had to be brought back under the control of the state. After his return to power in 1451, Mehmed went into action. He dismissed key military leaders, including the Aga of the Janissaries, and appointed trusted figures to key offices, then imposed harsh disciplinary measures on the army, such as flogging and executions. Yet even these actions did not fully satisfy the Sultan. To better control the elite Janissary Corps and ensure their future loyalty, Mehmed introduced the largest palace guard unit, the loyal Sekbans, into their ranks. Numbering around 6,000 men in total, the Sekbans had previously accompanied the Sultans on their leisure hunts as a part of their large retinue and raised their hunting dogs. When the Sultan's armies were off on military campaigns, it was also the Sekban who guarded the capital. With their inclusion into the Janissary Corps, they now became a new block of support that Mehmed could call upon. For the most part, Sekbans retained their original roles in later generations, thus preserving their distinct identity and name within the larger Janissary Corps. However, by the 16th century, they would also begin to serve in active roles during military campaigns, often fighting alongside their new Janissary brethren. Mehmed continued his reorganization of the Janissaries in the years after his famous conquest of Constantinople in 1453. Old military scribes, raised within the corps, were replaced with civilian scribes independent of the corps hierarchy to prepare muster lists that recorded all details of individual soldiers. This was mainly done to keep the corps' financial spending under the direct control of the central government. The Sultan also moved the main Janissary barracks to Constantinople, and founded new Ajami Ojayas in the old capital of Edirne and in the new capital to supplement the original hearth founded in Gallipoli. By the end of Mehmed's reign, the Academy Ujaya of Constantinople had grown into the largest Janissary training institution, with 3,000 to 4,000 cadets organized into 31 odas or rooms. In addition to military training, the cadets were now also tasked with performing various manual labor tasks for the palace and the government, as well as providing security during the absence of regular Janissary units. Every 7 years, several Janissary regiment commanders were tasked with collecting and selecting youths from across the empire's many provinces. This mode of recruitment was called the Devshirme or child levy. Christian youths from rural villages were preferred for their experience in manual labor on farms, rather than those from urban centers working in commerce. Normally, each 40th family unit had to provide one youth, preferably aged 14 to 18. Families with only one son were officially exempt from having their child taken, as Ottoman regulations aimed to avoid completely extinguishing a family line and thus maintaining the family as a stable tax unit for the state. For the most part, the new recruits were Greeks, Serbs, Bulgarians, Albanians, and Bosnians, as Ottoman officials found other ethnicities unsuitable for the corps and thus avoided them. Often recruiters viewed Wallachians as unruly and treacherous, Jews as too vital for the economy, and Roma as unrighteous and corrupt. Nevertheless, Bosnians, even after converting to Islam, remained a preferred Devshirme group due to their loyalty, particularly for service in the royal household. Although it was illegal for a freeborn Muslim to enlist in the corps and become a slave to the Sultan, an official council decision by the central government in 1564 allowed an exemption for Bosnian Muslims. As bureaucratization and standardization in the empire increased over time, the central government implemented detailed recruitment procedures and various control measures, making such operations very strict. Despite this, reports of abuse and misconduct persisted into the 16th century, including accepting bribes, intimidating locals, and moving youth from one village to another to avoid recruitment. Although the Devshirme was a compulsory levy, some Christian families over time came to view it as an opportunity rather than a loss. Boys who were taken could receive elite education, steady pay, and the chance to rise to high office within the Ottoman state. As a result, some families reportedly bribed officials or tried to ensure their sons met the recruitment criteria. This attitude was most common during the 16th century, when the Devshirme's prestige and rewards were at their height. However, stories of sorrow often surrounded the recruitment process, as families around the Balkans lived in fear that their sons would be taken away from their homelands. Many boys were hidden away in forests and caves by their families when Ottoman recruiters arrived in their towns. Also, many boys were married off at an early age during this period, as married persons were forbidden to be recruited. The Devshirme combined state-building efficiency with profound personal disruption, shaping both Ottoman governance and the collective memory of subject populations. With the expansion of Devshirme recruitment, Sultan Mehmed II began centralizing the Ottoman state under the authority of the central government in Constantinople. As a result of this expansion, the Kul system was also born. The system was a foundational institution of the Ottoman Empire that created a class of state servants personally loyal to the Sultan. The word Kul literally means slave or servant, but in the Ottoman context, it referred to individuals who were legally owned by the Sultan, yet could rise to the highest military and administrative offices in the empire. This system was central to Ottoman state building and imperial control. Most Kul were recruited through the Devshirme, and because they had no hereditary claims, tribal backing, or independent power bases, their status and careers depended entirely on loyalty, competence, and the Sultan's favor. The Kul system allowed the Ottomans to bypass the old Turkic aristocracy and prevent the emergence of rival noble families. High-ranking Kul served as grand viziers, governors, generals, and admirals, wielding immense authority while, in theory, remaining the Sultan's servants. In return, they enjoyed great wealth, prestige, and social mobility. By creating a professional ruling elite directly tied to the throne, the Kul system strengthened centralization and stability, making it a key factor in Ottoman military and administrative success during the empire's classical age. By the end of Mehmed's reign, the Janissary Corps consisted of 101 battalions of Chehmat frontier troops stationed around the provinces, 61 battalions of Bölük troops stationed in the capital, and 34 Sekban battalions. Each battalion, also known as Orta, was made up of 50 to 100 soldiers and had its own special insignia, often displayed on its barracks doors, war flags, and tents. Recalling the legionary standards of ancient Rome, these insignia designs included various animals and weapons, as well as boats, buildings, crescents, and flowers. Each battalion was also specialized in a particular form of combat, such as the 82nd specializing in the use of crossbows called barracks, and the 22nd and 92nd specializing in early firearms. However, by the 17th century, every battalion adopted a standard military kit consisting of a musket, dagger, and sword. All in all, the total strength of the entire corps numbered around 10,000 men in 1480, slightly increasing to 13,000 by the reign of Suleiman the Magnificent in the 16th century. The Khazanah Sharif, or noble cauldron, was the sacred communal cooking cauldron of the Janissaries, and a powerful symbol of their unity. Each battalion possessed its own khazan, representing loyalty, discipline, and the Sultan's role as provider for the corps. As long as the cauldron remained upright, it signified obedience and order within the Janissaries. When grievances arose, overturning the khazan, known as Kazan Keldamak, was a public declaration of mutiny. This act signaled defiance not only against military commanders, but against the imperial authority itself. The Khazanah Sharif held a special place in Janissary identity, ritual, and political power. A notable feature of the Janissaries was how their officer titles mirrored kitchen terminology. Many lower and middle-ranking officers bore titles such as Chobaji, soup maker for regiment leaders, Ashjabasha, chief cook for quartermasters, and Odobasha, chief of chamber for lieutenants. This was not because officers focused more on managing food supplies than on combat, but because of the high respect for regimental noble cauldrons. Another emblem of Janissary prestige and identity was their unique uniforms. At first, their high white bonnets served as their signature, but later detailed uniform standards were established to clearly specify the attire of the Janissaries and other Capiculu corps. 200 years before other European nations, the Ottoman government consistently issued standardized uniforms, including an overcoat and shoes, to each soldier. The uniforms, while simple, were practical and durable. Their colors signified rank: yellow for high-ranking officers, black for junior officers, and red for common soldiers. Different types of headgear also played a key role in indicating rank, unit, and merit, with heroic soldiers sometimes receiving a distinctive turban. The connection between Haji Bektash Veli and the Janissaries formed one of the most distinctive religious-military relationships in Ottoman history. Haji Bektash Veli was a 13th century Anatolian Sufi saint whose teachings emphasized humility, communal solidarity, spiritual discipline, and loyalty to a guiding authority. Although he lived long before the formal creation of the Janissary corps in the late 14th century, Ottoman tradition later portrayed him as the spiritual founder and protector of the Janissaries. According to legend, he blessed the corps, giving it a sacred legitimacy that strengthened its internal unity and loyalty to the Sultan. By the 15th century, under the reign of Mehmed II, the Bektashi order, which claimed spiritual descent from Haji Bektash, became closely associated with the Janissaries, and eventually functioned as their official religious framework. Bektashi beliefs were relatively flexible and inclusive, incorporating mystical elements and symbolic interpretations of Islam. This made the order particularly well suited to the Janissaries, who were largely recruited through the Devshirme system and consisted of converts who lacked strong familial or tribal ties within wider Muslim society. Bektashi dervishes were stationed in Janissary barracks, led rituals, blessed campaigns, and officiated at important moments, such as promotions, funerals, and oath ceremonies. Through these practices, the Bektashi order reinforced discipline, collective identity, and a sense of sacred purpose within the corps. Over time, the Janissaries came to see themselves not only as soldiers of the Sultan, but as members of a spiritually chosen community. This relationship became so entrenched that when Sultan Mehmed II abolished the Janissary corps in 1826, he also ordered the suppression of the Bektashi order, viewing it as the ideological and spiritual foundation of Janissary resistance. The Janissaries were the elite corps of the classical Ottoman army. Their primary weapon in the 15th century was a powerful composite bow, designed to deliver fast, accurate shots at long range. For close combat, they carried straight or slightly curved swords, known as kilij, or early Yagatan short sabers, as well as small hand axes or maces. Long polearms, such as spears, were sometimes used to defend against cavalry. Shields were small and round, typically made of leather over a wooden frame. Most probably, firearms were introduced into the corps during the first half of the 15th century. Additionally, a type of primitive hand grenade, commonly known as an alcumbaresa, became a popular weapon after the mid-16th century. The Ottoman leadership quickly understood the importance of firearms, but decided to stick with their traditional composite bows. Meanwhile, most European nations abandoned older missile weapons that needed extensive training, favoring firearms that were easier to learn. This choice was driven by a mix of practicality and conservatism. The Janissaries relied heavily on their composite bows, which were their main weapons. Early firearms like arquebuses and matchlock muskets often proved flawed, unreliable, and slow to reload. In comparison, composite bows offered accuracy and reliability, firing about 10 shots per minute, while early firearms averaged just 1 shot every 2 minutes. By the 17th century, however, the bow's role in combat was diminishing as muskets became standard in nearly all armies. Despite this shift, archery remained an essential part of the Janissaries' daily routine, with commanders actively encouraging its practice. As for battle tactics, the Janissaries usually positioned themselves at the center of the army, between a front line of Azab light infantry and Kapakulu Sipahi to their rear. Preferring to be deployed in deep formations, the corps was famous for maintaining a continuous barrage of fire in combat by rotating rows forward. Their discipline, courage, and training allowed them to keep this formation even under heavy enemy fire. Sometimes, during defensive battles, some regiments were arranged in linear trenches, but in open terrain, seeking cover from incoming fire or breaking from the lines was considered cowardly. When the enemy was near, the Janissaries often charged forward at full speed in loose formation. When contact was made, they stashed away their bows or muskets and pulled out their preferred melee weapon. Between 1453 and 1606, the Janissaries were central to the Ottoman Empire's rise as a dominant early modern military power, particularly in siege warfare and gunpowder combat. Their importance became unmistakable during the fall of Constantinople in 1453, where Janissaries led the final assault on the Theodosian walls. Their discipline, coordination, and ability to exploit breaches created by artillery secured one of the most significant conquests in world history and set the pattern for future Ottoman warfare. In the decades that followed, Janissaries played a key role in consolidating Ottoman power across the Balkans and Anatolia, participating in the sieges of Trebizond and numerous fortified towns. Their effectiveness increased as they became one of the earliest standing infantry forces to systematically adopt firearms, giving the Ottomans a decisive edge over enemies relying primarily on cavalry. This advantage was clearly demonstrated at the Battle of Chaldiran in 1514, where Janissary musketry and field fortifications helped defeat the Safavid army and secure eastern Anatolia. Under Suleiman the Magnificent, the Janissaries reached the height of their military reputation. During the Siege of Rhodes in 1522, they launched relentless assaults that forced the surrender of the Knights Hospitaller, one of the best defended fortresses in the Mediterranean. 4 years later, at the Battle of Mohács, Janissary firepower contributed to the swift destruction of the Hungarian army, opening Central Europe to Ottoman influence. Even in setbacks, such as the Siege of Vienna in 1529, Janissaries demonstrated advanced siegecraft, including trench warfare and mining, and came close to breaching the city's defences. During the late 16th century and the Long Turkish War, the Janissaries remained a decisive force, despite increasing challenges. They captured strongholds such as Eger in 1596, and played a crucial role at the Battle of Kerestes, where disciplined Janissary counterattacks reversed an Ottoman near defeat. Although the Ottoman government prioritized logistics and the welfare of the Janissaries, life in the military, particularly during campaigns, was extremely harsh. Thanks to rigorous training and a Spartan-like lifestyle in the barracks, the Janissaries adapted effectively to these challenges. The soldiers were resilient and able to withstand the hardships of long, relentless campaigns. They could march non-stop with heavy loads over difficult terrain, often under continuous enemy attack. Their reliability to the state was proven many times. Usually they fought obediently, caring little for their safety, and seldom retreated or surrendered. Sometimes their presence alone was sufficient to frighten an opponent. Due to their loyalty, combat skill, and reliability, the government began assigning new roles to the Janissaries. Under Mehmed II, they were responsible for guarding key fortresses for up to 3 years. During Suleiman I's rule, Janissary garrisons were established in major provincial cities to curb the ambitions of local governors and maintain law and order. In this setting, maintaining peace and order in Constantinople was a top peacetime duty of the Janissaries stationed there. Some units also took on law enforcement roles, such as protecting important institutions, embassies, and handling police, fire, and constabulary duties. While the Janissary military corps became the much-feared unit of the Ottoman military, it was only a small portion of the entire war machine of the Sons of Osman. In the next episode of our series on the history and evolution of the Ottoman military, we will examine the other units of the classical army and how together they waged successful wars on 3 continents for over 2 centuries. To tune in for that, make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button. Please consider liking, subscribing, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Recently, we started releasing weekly Patreon and YouTube member exclusive content. Consider joining their ranks via the link in the description or button under the video to watch these weekly videos, learn about our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our private Discord, and much more. This is the Kings and Generals channel, and we will catch you on the next one.